The Apache girl watched the carpenter work. Then she asked, "You're probably married, are you?" The morning sun rose slowly over the dry land, painting the desert in soft gold and pale orange. The wind moved gently across the open ground, carrying dust, sage, and the quiet sounds of waking life. In a small Apache community near the edge of the reservation, the day began like many others, simple, steady, and shaped by routine. The girl woke early, as she always did. She helped her grandmother prepare breakfast, sweeping the small porch before the heat settled in. Her grandmother moved slowly now, her hands stiff with age, but her voice was strong and calm. She spoke about the weather, about the land, about things that mattered. The girl listened, even when she had heard the same stories before. In their home, listening was a form of respect. After breakfast, the girl tied her hair back and stepped outside. From where she stood, she could see the old community building in the distance. It had been there longer than she had been alive. Its wooden walls were worn, its roof patched again and again over the years. Meetings, celebrations, and quiet gatherings had all taken place inside it. It was not beautiful, but it was important. That was where the carpenter was working. He had arrived 2 days earlier in a dusty pickup truck early in the morning. He didn't draw attention to himself. No loud greeting, no big smile meant to impress. He simply parked, took out his tools, and began working. Some people noticed him, some didn't. The girl noticed him right away. She told herself it was nothing. New faces were rare, and anyone new stood out. Still, she found her eyes moving toward the building whenever she passed by. She noticed the way he measured twice before cutting once. The way he wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. The way he paused to greet elders, lowering his voice when he spoke to them. He looked older than her, but not by much. His hair was dark, touched lightly with gray near the sides. His face showed signs of a hard-working life, sun, wind, and long days outdoors. He wore simple clothes, faded jeans, a plain shirt, work boots covered in dust. There was nothing fancy about him. Yet something about his presence felt calm. The girl went about her tasks for the day, helping a neighbor, carrying water, sorting supplies for a small local shop. Still, her thoughts drifted back to the man working under the sun. She wondered where he came from. She wondered how long he would stay. By midday, the heat grew heavy. The carpenter worked steadily, stopping only to drink water or adjust his tools. A few people passed by, offering short greetings. He nodded politely, never pushing conversation. When an elder man stopped to speak with him, the carpenter listened carefully, his head slightly bowed, as if the words mattered. The girl watched from a distance, sitting in the shade near her home. She didn't plan to go closer. She wasn't that kind of person. She had learned early in life to keep her thoughts guarded. Life on the reservation had taught her patience, but it had also taught her caution. Her past had shaped her that way. She had seen people come and go, workers, helpers, visitors who spoke kindly and left without warning. Promises were easy to make and easy to break. She didn't blame anyone for it. Still, she had learned not to expect too much. In the afternoon, her grandmother asked her to bring some cold water to the men working on the building. It was a small act of kindness, one the community often did. The girl hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She filled a container with cool water and walked toward the building. Her steps were slow, her thoughts restless. As she came closer, the sounds of work grew louder, the tap of tools, the scrape of wood, the steady rhythm of effort. The carpenter noticed her approach and stopped working. He straightened, resting his hands at his sides. When she offered the water, he accepted it with a quiet thank you. His voice was calm, respectful. For a brief moment, their eyes met. There was no rush in his gaze, no discomfort, just awareness. "You're welcome," she said softly. He drank the water carefully, then handed the container back. "This place means a lot to people," he said, glancing at the building. "I'm glad I can help fix it." She nodded. "It's old, but it holds many memories." He smiled slightly, not wide or showy, just enough to show understanding. "Those are the buildings worth fixing." There was nothing more to say, and yet neither of them rushed to leave. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It felt natural. After a moment she stepped back and returned home. Her heart felt steady, but her thoughts were louder than before. Over the next few days, the carpenter became part of the background of daily life. Children passed by, watching him work. Elders checked on the progress. The girl continued her routines, but she found herself noticing small details. How he repaired broken wood instead of replacing it when possible. How he cleaned the area at the end of each day. He worked like someone who respected what was already there. One evening, as the sun lowered and painted the sky in deep red and purple, the girl passed by the building again. The carpenter was packing up his tools. He looked tired but peaceful. "Long day?" she asked, surprising herself. He looked up and smiled gently. "A good one." They stood there for a moment, watching the sky change. The desert grew quiet, as if holding its breath. "Will you be here long?" she asked. "Just until the job is done," he replied honestly. "A few more days, maybe." She nodded, hiding the small feeling of disappointment that rose in her chest. She had expected that answer. Still, hearing it made things feel more real. That night, she lay awake longer than usual. She thought about the way life moved, how people crossed paths briefly, how some moments stayed even after the person was gone. She didn't know why this man mattered, only that he had made her notice something inside herself she had kept quiet for a long time. Hope, maybe. Or curiosity, or simply the desire to be seen. The next morning she woke before the sun again. The day felt different, though nothing had changed. As she stepped outside, she saw the carpenter already at work, just as steady as before. She watched him for a moment, then turned to her chores. Life went on as it always did. But now, in the quiet space between routine and thought, something new had begun, small, careful, and uncertain, and she didn't yet know where it would lead. The days moved forward quietly, one after another, but something had shifted in the air. The carpenter was no longer just a passing figure in the distance. He had become part of the rhythm of the place. His footsteps, the sound of his tools, and the steady way he worked blended into the daily life of the community. The girl noticed this change before she understood it. Each morning, she woke early and helped her grandmother as usual. She swept, cooked, listened, and learned. But now, when she stepped outside, her eyes naturally moved toward the community building. She did not rush. She did not stare. She simply looked, the way someone looks at the horizon without meaning to. The carpenter greeted people by name now. He had learned them quickly. He asked elders how they were feeling and listened carefully to their answers. He helped children move out of the way before lifting heavy boards. He never acted like the work was a burden, even under the strong sun. The girl saw all of this. She also noticed what he did not do. He did not act important. He did not complain. He did not try to impress anyone. There was a quiet honesty in his movements, in the way he handled the old wood like it mattered. One afternoon, the girl was asked to help sort donated supplies inside the community building. The carpenter was working on the far side, repairing a wall that had been weak for years. The space smelled like dust, old wood, and time. Sunlight came through the windows in long, soft lines. They worked without speaking at first. She stacked boxes carefully, checking labels and placing items where they belonged. He measured and adjusted the boards, checking his work twice before moving on. The sounds of their tasks filled the space comfortably. After a while, he broke the silence. "This building has good bones," he said, tapping the wood lightly. "It's been taken care of." She glanced at him. "People here look after what they have." He nodded. "It shows." The conversation ended there, but it left a warmth behind. It wasn't the words themselves. It was the respect in them. Over the next few days, their conversations grew slowly, like something cautious but alive. They spoke about simple things, the weather, the work, how the land changed with the seasons. He asked questions, but never too many. She answered honestly, but never more than she felt comfortable sharing. She learned that he had been a carpenter for many years. He traveled where work was needed, small towns, quiet places. He fixed things that had been left behind or forgotten. "I don't stay in one place long," he admitted one evening as they stood outside, watching the sun fall behind the hills. "Work moves, I follow it." She nodded, understanding more than she said. "Some people are like that." "And you?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "I stay." There was no sadness in her voice, only truth. Her life was rooted in family, in land, in responsibility. Leaving was not simple. It never had been. He did not press further. The girl appreciated that more than she could explain. As the days passed, she began to feel something unfamiliar. It was not excitement in a loud way. It was quieter, a sense of awareness, a feeling that she mattered, not because she did something special, but because she existed. She had not felt that often before. In the past, she had watched others form connections that faded quickly. Words were spoken easily, promises made without thought. She had learned to protect herself by staying quiet, by expecting less. But the carpenter was different. He never made promises. He never hinted at things he could not offer. His honesty was steady, even when it revealed limits. One afternoon, a sudden windstorm swept through the area. Dust filled the air and people hurried indoors. The carpenter worked quickly to secure loose boards before the wind could damage his progress. The girl watched from nearby, concerned. When the storm passed, she brought him water again. His face was dusty, his clothes marked by the day's work. "Thank you," he said, taking a long drink. "That came fast." "The wind here doesn't warn," she replied. He smiled. "I'm learning that." They laughed softly, a brief shared moment that felt easy. That evening, the community gathered for a small meal. Nothing special, just food shared after a long day. The carpenter was invited to join. He accepted without hesitation, sitting respectfully among the elders, listening more than speaking. The girl sat across from him. Their eyes met once or twice, nothing more. But something passed between them, recognition perhaps, or simply comfort. Later, as people began to leave, he walked with her part of the way home. "This place feels strong," he said. "Not loud, but strong." She smiled faintly. "It has to be." They stopped near her home. The night air was cool now, the sky wide and full of stars. "I'll be finishing up soon," he said, not as an announcement, just a fact. "I know," she replied. They stood in silence again. This time the quiet felt heavier. After he left, she went inside and sat with her grandmother. The older woman looked at her carefully. "You've been thinking a lot lately," her grandmother said. The girl nodded. "Yes. Thinking can be good," her grandmother said gently. "As long as it doesn't pull you away from yourself." Those words stayed with her. That night the girl lay awake, listening to the sounds of the land. She thought about the carpenter's honesty, about the way he respected the place and the people. She thought about how easy it felt to speak to him and how rare that was. She also thought about the truth he had shared. He would leave. That was not something she could change. The next day she found herself watching him work again, but now with a new awareness. She noticed the way he paused sometimes, as if thinking. She wondered if he felt the same quiet pull she did, or if this was something she carried alone. In the afternoon, she gathered her courage and walked closer to the building. He noticed her and smiled. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," she said. Then, after a pause, "I was just wondering how much longer you think the work will take." He wiped his hands on a cloth. 2 days, maybe 3. Her chest tightened slightly, but she kept her voice steady. "You did good work here." "I tried to," he replied. "It matters," she nodded. "It does." They stood there, facing each other, the space between them filled with unspoken thoughts. She wanted to ask more, about his life, about where he would go next, about whether he ever wished for something different. But she didn't. Some questions, she knew, carried weight, and once asked they could not be taken back. As the sun lowered again, she returned home, feeling both fuller and more uncertain than before. Something was growing between them, not through grand gestures, but through quiet moments and shared understanding. And deep inside, she felt a question forming, one she had not yet dared to speak. A question that came not from hope alone, but from the need to protect her heart before it reached too far. The day began quietly, like many before it, but the girl felt a restlessness she could not explain. The sky was clear, the air warm but gentle, and the land seemed calm. Still, something inside her felt unsettled, as if she were standing at the edge of a decision she had been avoiding. She went through her morning tasks carefully. She helped her grandmother prepare food, cleaned the small living space, and stepped outside to hang clothes under the sun. Her hands moved out of habit, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Again and again, her mind returned to the carpenter. She knew he would be leaving soon. He had been honest about that. The work was almost done, and people had already started thanking him in advance. Every goodbye she overheard felt like a reminder she could not escape. By late morning, she walked toward the community building, telling herself she only needed to drop off some supplies. When she arrived, she saw him standing near the wall he had nearly finished repairing. The wood looked strong now, steady, like it would last many more years. He noticed her and smiled, that same gentle smile that never asked for anything. "Almost done," he said, stepping back to look at his work. "It looks good," she replied. "You fixed what people thought couldn't be fixed." He shrugged slightly. "Most things just need time and care." She stood nearby, watching him gather his tools. The sun was high now, and the quiet hum of the place felt louder than usual. She realized she might not get another moment like this. The thought made her chest tighten. They stood in silence for a while, the kind of silence that holds words inside it. She took a slow breath. Her heart was steady, but her hands felt warm, her thoughts racing. Then, without fully planning to, she spoke. "You're probably married, aren't you?" The words came out softer than she expected. Not sharp, not accusing, just careful. He froze for a moment. His hands stopped moving. The question clearly surprised him. He looked at her, really looked at her, as if weighing how much honesty the moment required. "No," he said finally, "I'm not." She nodded, trying to keep her expression calm even as her heart beat faster. "I just thought," she began, then stopped. "I understand why you'd ask," he said gently. "People usually have reasons." She looked down at the ground, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to assume." "It's okay," he replied. "I'm not married, I never have been." She looked back up at him. "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. This time she worried she had crossed a line, but he didn't seem upset. Instead, he leaned against the wall and thought for a moment. "I move too much," he said. "Work takes me from place to place. It's hard to build something steady when you're always leaving." She nodded slowly. "So you chose work." "I chose what I knew how to do," he corrected. "And it kept me busy enough not to ask hard questions." She understood that more than she wanted to admit. They stood there, the space between them filled with honesty that felt fragile but real. "I asked because," she hesitated, then decided to finish the thought. "I didn't want to imagine something that wasn't possible." He studied her face, not with curiosity but with care. "You're careful," he said. "I had to learn to be. I respect that." His words settled inside her, warm and steady. The conversation changed something between them. It didn't turn into something dramatic or overwhelming. Instead, it became quieter, deeper. They spoke more openly after that, not about dreams or promises, but about truths. They talked about loneliness, not as something tragic, but as something familiar. He spoke about nights spent in unfamiliar places, about learning to be comfortable with himself. She spoke about staying, about watching others leave, about carrying responsibility early in life. Neither of them tried to fix the other. They simply listened. As the afternoon passed, clouds drifted slowly across the sky. The workday ended, but neither of them seemed in a hurry to go. They walked together for a while just as they had before, but now the silence felt different. It was filled with understanding. "I'll be leaving the day after tomorrow," he said quietly. She felt the words settle like weight in her chest. She had expected them, yet they still hurt. "I know," she replied. They stopped near the place where their paths usually separated. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the ground. "I don't want to make this harder than it needs to be," he said, "but I also don't want to pretend this hasn't mattered." She met his eyes. "It has mattered." They shared a small smile, one filled with gratitude and restraint. That night the girl sat outside with her grandmother, watching the stars. The older woman spoke softly about the land, about how paths cross for reasons not always clear at first. "Some people come to teach us something," her grandmother said, "not to stay forever." The girl nodded, feeling tears press behind her eyes, though she did not let them fall. The next day passed slowly. Every moment felt sharper, more detailed. The sound of tools, the movement of people, the warmth of the sun, all of it felt temporary. She watched him work one last time. He was focused, careful, just as he had been from the beginning. There was no sadness in his movements, only completion. When the work was done, people gathered to thank him. Words were spoken, hands were shaken. He accepted the gratitude humbly. Later, as the crowd thinned, she approached him. "I'm glad you came here," she said. "So am I," he replied. "I didn't expect this place to leave a mark." "It has that effect," she said quietly. They stood together as the sky darkened. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been understood. The question she had asked earlier echoed in her mind. It had been simple, yet it had opened a door she hadn't known was there. As they parted that evening, she realized something important. The question had not been about him being married. It had been about whether she allowed herself to feel something real. And now, even knowing he would leave, she was glad she had asked. Because some moments, even brief ones, deserve honesty. And sometimes, the courage to ask is what stays with a person long after the answer is gone. The next morning arrived slower than usual. The girl woke before dawn, the sky still dark, the air cool and quiet. She lay still for a moment, listening to the soft sounds of her grandmother moving in the next room. Everything felt the same, yet nothing felt the same. She knew this day mattered. She rose and helped with breakfast as she always did. Corn bread warmed on the pan, tea steamed gently. Her grandmother watched her closely but did not ask questions. Some things did not need words. After the meal, the girl stepped outside. The sky was just beginning to change color, deep blue turning pale near the horizon. In the distance, she could already hear movement near the community building. The carpenter was there early, finishing small details before leaving. She walked slowly toward the building, not rushing, not delaying. Each step felt heavy, not because of fear, but because of understanding. This was not a day for hope. It was a day for truth. When she arrived, he was tightening the last pieces of wood near the door. He looked tired but peaceful. When he saw her, he smiled. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied. They stood quietly for a moment. The early light touched the building, making the repaired wood shine softly. "I'll be packing up today," he said. "I leave tomorrow morning." She nodded. "I know." The words were simple, but they carried weight. They spent the morning near each other, not always talking, just sharing the space. She helped clean the inside of the building, sweeping dust and moving chairs back into place. He checked his work carefully, making sure everything was solid. At times, their eyes met. There was no rush, no hidden meaning, just acknowledgement. By midday, the work was done. The building stood strong again, ready for the people who would fill it with voices and memories. A few community members stopped by to see the results. They thanked him, shook his hand, and spoke kindly. He accepted their words with humility. The girl watched from a short distance. She felt proud of him, though she knew she had no claim to that feeling. Still, it was there. When the others left, the quiet returned. "I'm glad it's finished," he said. "It deserves to last." "It will," she replied, "because you cared." He looked at her, surprised by the honesty in her voice. "That means a lot." They walked together for a while toward the edge of the area where the land opened wide. The sun was high now and the day felt still. "I want to be clear," he said after a moment. "I don't want to leave behind confusion." She appreciated that. "Neither do I." "This connection," he continued, choosing his words carefully, "it matters to me, but I can't ask you for something I don't know how to give." She nodded slowly. "I wouldn't ask you to stay." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Thank you for saying that." She met his eyes. "I've learned that holding on too tightly can hurt more than letting go." There was a long pause between them. "Still," he said quietly, "I wish things were simpler." "So do I," she answered. "But simple doesn't always mean right." They shared a small, understanding smile. That afternoon, the girl returned home and helped her grandmother prepare for the evening. They worked side by side, comfortable in silence. The older woman eventually spoke. "You look like someone who is saying goodbye inside," her grandmother said. The girl swallowed. "Maybe I am." Her grandmother nodded. "Goodbyes are part of living. They don't mean something was a mistake." That brought comfort. As the sun lowered, the community gathered again near the building. It wasn't a planned event, just people coming together naturally. Food was shared, stories were told. The carpenter sat among them, listening, smiling, learning. The girl sat nearby. She did not stay close, but she did not stay far either. There was balance in that. Later, as the gathering thinned, he stood and stretched. "I should finish packing," he said. She walked with him one last time. The path felt familiar now, worn by quiet conversations and shared moments. The sky was painted in soft colors, and the air carried the smell of earth cooling after a warm day. "I'm glad you asked me that question," he said suddenly. She looked at him. "The one about being married?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it showed courage," he said, "and honesty. Those things matter." She thought about that. "I was afraid." "Courage usually comes with fear," he replied. They stopped where they usually did. The place where their paths separated. "I don't know what comes next for you," he said, "but I hope it's good." "It will be," she said softly, "for you too." They stood there, not touching, not reaching for more than what was right. The moment felt full, even without promises. "I'll remember this place," he said. "So will I," she replied. He gave her a final smile, then turned and walked away. She watched until he was gone. That night the girl sat alone outside her home. The stars were bright, the land quiet. She felt sadness, yes, but also something stronger, peace. She had not lost herself in this connection. She had not imagined a future that could not exist. She had allowed herself to feel, to ask, to understand. And that was enough. The next morning she woke early again. The carpenter's truck was gone. The community building stood repaired and ready. Life continued. She helped her grandmother, greeted neighbors, and went about her day. But she carried something new inside her, not longing, not regret, but clarity. She had learned that not every meaningful connection needed to last forever. Some existed to remind a person of who they were and what they deserved. As she passed the community building later that day, she paused for a moment. Sunlight touched the wood, warm and steady. She smiled quietly and continued walking forward, grounded in the land, open to whatever life would bring next. The days after his departure felt quiet but not empty. The girl noticed the change most in the mornings. There was no sound of tools in the distance, no figure working near the community building. The land looked the same, yet something gentle had moved on. She returned to her routine. She woke early, helped her grandmother, and stepped outside to greet the day. The air still carried the familiar smell of dust and sage. The sun still rose over the hills in the same patient way. Life did not pause for anyone. At first, she expected to feel a sharp sense of loss. She waited for sadness to take over her thoughts, to make her days heavy. But that did not happen. Instead, she felt something calmer, something thoughtful. It surprised her. When she passed the community building, she slowed her steps. The repaired walls stood strong, steady, and clean. People had already begun using the space again. Laughter drifted through the open door one afternoon as children practiced songs for a gathering. Elders met there in the evenings, sitting close and talking quietly. The building felt alive again. She realized then that his presence had not disappeared. It remained in the work he had done, in the care he had shown. It remained in the way the building now stood ready for the future. And it remained in her. She thought about their conversations while she worked. Not every detail, not every word, but the feeling of them. The honesty, the ease, the respect. She had not felt rushed or small in his presence. She had felt seen without being examined. That feeling stayed with her. Her grandmother noticed the change before anyone else. One evening, as they sat together outside, watching the sky darken, the older woman spoke. "You are quieter," her grandmother said, "but not closed." The girl smiled faintly. "I think I learned something." Her grandmother nodded. "Learning doesn't always come from long stories. Sometimes it comes from short ones." The girl looked out at the land. "I used to think that if something ended, it meant it failed." "And now?" her grandmother asked. "And now I think some things end because they have done what they were meant to do." Her grandmother smiled, pleased. As the weeks passed, the girl felt stronger in small ways. She spoke more openly with people in her community. She shared ideas during meetings. She helped organize gatherings at the community building. She did not do these things because of him, but because something inside her had shifted. She trusted herself more. One afternoon, a visitor came to the community asking for directions. The girl spoke calmly and clearly, guiding them with confidence. As the visitor thanked her and walked away, she realized she would not have done that so easily before. She would have stepped back, let someone else speak. That small moment mattered. At night, she sometimes thought of the carpenter. She wondered where he was working now. Somewhere else quiet, perhaps. Somewhere else in need of care. She hoped he was well. She hoped he continued to find meaning in the work he did. But the thoughts no longer carried ache. They carried warmth. She understood now that connection did not always ask for more. Sometimes it simply asked to be acknowledged. The seasons began to shift. The air cooled slightly in the evenings. The colors of the land softened. The girl spent more time walking alone, letting her thoughts move freely. She no longer felt afraid of them. One evening she stood near the community building as the sun set. The sky was wide and glowing. She placed her hand lightly against the repaired wall. The wood was solid beneath her palm. She remembered his words. Most things just need time and care. She smiled to herself. Later that night, she wrote in a small notebook she kept hidden away. She wrote about the question she had asked, about why it had mattered, about how it had changed her. She wrote that asking had not been about hoping for an answer she wanted. It had been about honoring her own feelings enough to speak. She realized that was the lesson she would carry forward. Months passed. Life continued to unfold in its steady way. There were challenges, as there always were, repairs to be made, family concerns, moments of doubt. But she faced them with a steadier heart. The memory of the carpenter became part of her story, not the center of it, and that felt right. One afternoon, while helping organize tools at the community building, she overheard someone mention another repair project planned for the future. Someone suggested bringing in outside help again. She listened, thoughtful. For the first time, she considered learning those skills herself. Not because she wanted to replace him, but because she wanted to contribute in new ways. The idea felt right. She shared the thought with her grandmother later that day. "You want to learn to fix things?" her grandmother asked. "Yes," the girl said. "Not just buildings, other things too," her grandmother smiled. "That is a good path." The girl felt a quiet excitement, not the kind that rushed ahead, but the kind that waited patiently. That night she dreamed of open roads and strong hands shaping old wood into something useful again. When she woke, she felt rested. She knew now that life did not give answers all at once. It offered moments, questions, crossings. And sometimes it offered a person who showed up briefly, did their work with care, and left something stronger behind. As the year moved forward, the girl continued to grow. She helped where she was needed. She spoke when it mattered. She listened deeply. She stayed rooted but not closed. And when she thought back to the moment she had asked, "You're probably married, aren't you?" she no longer felt embarrassment or regret. She felt pride, because that question had not been about him alone. It had been about her choosing honesty over silence. In the end, what remained was not a story of what could have been, but a story of what was learned. A reminder that even brief connections can shape a life. A reminder that asking is sometimes the bravest thing a person can do. And a reminder that moving forward does not mean forgetting. It means carrying the best parts with grace. The girl stood one morning at the edge of the land, the sun rising ahead of her. She breathed in the air, steady and calm. Then she turned and walked on, ready for whatever came next.